The call came at 6:42 on a gray Tuesday morning, just as Claire Whitmore was pouring coffee into a mug she didn't remember buying. Marcus Hale, the contractor, did not bother with pleasantries. "Mrs. Whitmore, I think you should come home." Alone. For a moment, she thought she had misheard him. The word alone landed oddly like a dropped plate that didn't shatter but should have. "I'm sorry," she said, pressing the phone tighter to her ear. In the background, she could hear the hollow echo of tools against drywall, the distant whine of a power saw. "There's something in the wall," he said, "in your husband's study, something he didn't want anyone to find." The coffee machine beeped behind her, shrill and mundane. Outside her downtown office window, Boston traffic crawled through mist like a slow-moving wound. Daniel had been dead for 4 months. 4 months since the police officer stood on her front steps, hat in hand, rainwater dripping from the brim. 4 months since she learned that a black SUV had crossed the median on I-90 and folded Daniel's sedan like paper. Instant, they said. No suffering. Now a stranger was telling her that Daniel had left something behind inside a wall. "I'll be there," she said before she could think of a reason not to. The house in Wellesley looked indecently normal when she arrived. White siding, manicured hedges, the porch swing. Daniel had installed one autumn after deciding they needed something charming. Nothing about it suggested secrets. Nothing suggested that inside a man had lived an entire life she might not have known. Marcus met her at the door, dusk, coating his beard, his expression tight with the kind of discomfort blue-collar men reserve for situations that feel too personal. "You sure you want to see it?" he asked. "No," she said truthfully, "but I will." He led her down the hallway toward the study, stepping over plastic tarps and paint cans. The room smelled like sawdust and old paper. Daniel's smell, faint but unmistakable, as if the house itself refused to let him go. The far wall had been open drywall cut into a neat rectangle between 2 studs. Inside was a dark cavity deeper than it should have been. Not insulation, not wiring, a space deliberately created. Marcus crouched and pulled out a metal box, the kind used for storing documents in fireproof safes. It was scratched "Utilitarian Anonymous." "I didn't open it," he said quickly. "Figured it wasn't my place." Claire nodded, though her hands were already trembling as she took it from him. It was heavier than expected. The latch clicked, it opened with a small, decisive sound. Inside were bundles of cash wrapped in rubber bands. Several old cell phones, identical black rectangles with no branding. A passport. She picked up the passport first. The photograph was Daniel's face. Same calm gray eyes, same faint crease between his brows. But the name printed beneath it was not Daniel Whitmore. It was David Mercer. Her stomach dropped, not like falling, but like something inside her had simply been removed. "There's more," Marcus said quietly. Beneath the passport lay a photograph. A little girl, maybe 7 or 8, sitting on a park swing, sunlight in her hair. She was laughing at whoever stood behind the camera, a private, unguarded laugh meant for someone she trusted completely. Claire did not need anyone to tell her whose eyes the child had. Under the photo was a folded piece of paper. Her fingers felt numb as she opened it. 2 words written in Daniel's careful architectural script: "Come home." Alone, no date, no explanation, just the command or plea. The room seemed to tilt. For a moment she thought she might faint, though she had never fainted in her life. Marcus shifted awkwardly. "Mrs. Whitmore, should I call someone?" She shook her head, unable to form words. "Call who?" "The police, a lawyer, a priest." Her husband had been dead for 4 months, and suddenly she did not know who he had been at all. After Marcus left, Claire sat on the study floor with the box in her lap, the afternoon light creeping slowly across the hardwood. The study had always been Daniel's domain. He designed it himself, insisting on building parts of it with his own hands. The shelves, the desk, the wall paneling, she had found it endearing. Then his quiet pride in craftsmanship. Now it felt calculated. She picked up one of the phones. Dead, of course. All of them were. Burner phones even, she knew that much. At the bottom of the box lay a charging cable and a small portable battery pack. Daniel had planned for someone to use these, not her. Someone else. Her gaze drifted to the photograph again. The girl's hair was a warm chestnut brown, lighter than Daniel's, but unmistakably related. There was something in the shape of her mouth, the tilt of her head. A daughter, the word formed in her mind like a bruise. Claire and Daniel had never had children. They had tried briefly, then stopped talking about it. He had said they were enough, just the two of them. She had believed him because believing was easier than asking whether he was relieved. Outside, a car passed, tires hissing on wet pavement. The ordinary sound felt obscene. She turned the photograph over. Nothing written on the back. No name, no date, no clue. Just a child frozen in a moment of joy, unaware she had just detonated someone else's life. That night, Claire did not sleep. She sat at the kitchen island with the contents of the box spread before her like evidence in a trial. As a corporate attorney, she was trained to assemble facts to construct narratives from fragments. But this narrative refused to cohere. Daniel had loved routine, Sunday grocery runs, Thursday takeout from the same Thai place, annual vacations planned months in advance. A man who built his life on predictability did not suddenly acquire fake passports and hidden cash, unless the routine itself had been the disguise. At 2:17 a.m., she noticed something she had missed earlier. One of the phones powered on when connected to the battery pack. The screen glowed faintly, illuminating the dark kitchen with a ghostly blue light. No lock screen photo, no notifications, just a list of contacts saved as numbers, no names. Except for one. Home. Her pulse thudded in her ears as she tapped it. A single text thread opened. Only one message unsent sitting in the draft field. I can't keep them safe much longer. No timestamp. No recipient visible. Just the words abandoned mid-confession. Them. Plural. Claire's throat tightened. The girl in the photo was not alone. A memory surfaced, unbidden Daniel standing at the window one winter night, staring into the dark backyard as if expecting someone to emerge from the trees. When she asked what he was looking at, he had smiled too quickly and said, "Nothing. Just thinking." She had kissed his shoulder and gone to bed. Now she wondered who he had been thinking about, or who he had been afraid of. Near dawn, Claire carried the photograph upstairs to their bedroom. The bed still felt too large for one person, the other half permanently undisturbed, as if Daniel might return and slide beneath the covers without explanation. She sat on his side and studied the girl's face again. "You don't know me," she whispered to the empty room, "but I think I knew your father." The words sounded absurd even to her. Outside, the first light of morning seeped through the curtains, pale and unforgiving. It illuminated the framed wedding photo on the dresser, Claire in ivory silk, Daniel in a dark suit, both of them smiling with uncomplicated certainty. She turned the photograph face down. Downstairs, her phone buzzed with a calendar reminder for a meeting she no longer cared about. The world expected her to continue as if nothing had changed, as if her husband had not just become a stranger. Come home. Alone. The note pulsed in her mind, less like an instruction now and more like a warning. Home to where, alone from whom? And why did she have the growing irrational feeling that Daniel had not hidden these things to protect himself, but to protect someone else from something that might still be out there? Claire lay back on the cold side of the bed, the photograph clutched against her chest, and stared at the ceiling until the light grew too bright to ignore. For the first time since Daniel's death, she understood that grief was not the worst thing he had left her. Uncertainty was, and somewhere a child with his eyes was living a life Claire had never been meant to see. In the weeks before Daniel Whitmore died, nothing had seemed wrong in a way that could be explained out loud. If anyone had asked Claire later, colleagues, distant relatives, the therapist, she would eventually stop seeing. She would have said their marriage was calm, stable, adult. The kind of relationship people envied because it lacked drama. What she would not say was that calm can sometimes be indistinguishable from distance. On their last Sunday together, they had gone to the grocery store on Route 9, the upscale one with polished concrete floors and ambient jazz drifting through hidden speakers. It was the sort of place where couples wore athleisure that cost more than rent in other states. Daniel pushed the cart while Claire selected produce, examining avocados with the solemnity of a jeweler appraising diamonds. "Dinner with the Harringtons is still on for Friday, right?" she asked. Daniel hesitated. "Just a fraction too long. I might have to fly out," he said. "Chicago, last-minute side issue." Claire didn't look up immediately. She rotated the avocado in her hands, searching for softness. Again, just overnight. He said it lightly, but his knuckles had tightened on the cart handle. She noticed that. She noticed everything, a professional hazard of being a lawyer trained to detect inconsistencies in tone as much as language. "You've been traveling a lot," she said. "Big project." "What project?" He smiled, not dismissively, but vaguely, as if the details were too dull to articulate. "Commercial redevelopment. Boring stuff." She let it go because she always let it go. Marriage, she believed, required a certain amount of deliberate incuriosity. Not secrecy, just the grace of not interrogating every unexplained moment. Still as they checked out, she watched him from the corner of her eye. He seemed alert in a way that had nothing to do with groceries, gaze flicking toward the entrance each time the automatic doors slid open, shoulders subtly braced. At the time, she thought he was distracted. Now she wondered if he had been afraid. Daniel had always been a quiet man, but not cold. He expressed affection through actions rather than words, fixing things before they broke, remembering obscure preferences, refilling her gas tank without being asked. He built their life the way he designed buildings: structurally sound, aesthetically pleasing, resistant to chaos. Their house in Wellesley was his proudest creation. He had overseen every detail from the orientation of the windows to the custom cabinetry in the kitchen. The study had been his personal project, completed mostly at night after his regular work hours. "I need a space that's mine," he had told her almost apologetically. "Just somewhere to think." Claire had laughed. "You're allowed to have a man cave, Daniel. It's not a federal offense." "It's not a cave," he said, faintly defensive. "It's a workspace." He had installed a solid core door with a lock, explaining that he sometimes took confidential calls related to clients. She had accepted this without question. Privacy, like trust, was supposed to be mutual. Occasionally, she would find him asleep at the desk when she woke at night. Head tilted back, glasses still on a reading lamp, casting a pool of warm light around him. Papers would be scattered across the surface, though he always gathered them quickly when he noticed her watching. "You should come to bed," she would say softly. "In a minute." He never explained what he was working on. She never asked. Love, she believed, then meant not demanding proof. There had been other small things, forgettable things, the kind that dissolve into the background of daily life until hindsight sharpens them into evidence. Daniel changing his phone password after years of leaving it face up on the kitchen counter. The sudden habit of taking calls outside, even in winter breath, fogging in the cold while he paced the patio. A duffel bag that appeared in the closet one month and vanished the next. Claire remembered asking about that casually while folding laundry. "Gym stuff," she said, lifting it with one hand. "It was heavier than gym clothes should be." "Yeah," he replied from the doorway. "Just old equipment." She hadn't opened it. Not because she trusted him blindly, but because she trusted the version of herself who didn't snoop. She was not the kind of woman who searched pockets or read messages. That kind of behavior belonged to unstable marriages, not theirs. Looking back, she wondered if he had been counting on that. 3 weeks before his death, they attended a charity gala at the Museum of Fine Arts, black tie champagne flutes, the low hum of wealth performing benevolence. Claire wore a deep green gown that Daniel had chosen himself. He rarely commented on fashion, which made his approval feel unusually significant. "You look," he paused, searching for a word strong enough. "Dangerous," she laughed. "That's a new one. I mean it in a good way." Throughout the evening, he stayed close to her side, one hand resting lightly at her back. To anyone watching, they would have appeared deeply in love. Several people commented on it, how attentive he was, how lucky she was to have such a devoted husband. At one point, Claire excused herself to the restroom. When she returned, Daniel was no longer at the bar where she had left him. She found him in a quiet corridor near the service entrance, speaking to a man she did not recognize. The conversation stopped abruptly when she approached. The stranger's face was forgettable in a deliberate way. Average height, average build, the kind of man you would not remember passing on the street. But his eyes lingered on Claire for a second too long, assessing rather than admiring. "Everything okay?" she asked. Daniel's smile was immediate and practiced. "Yeah, just a work contact." The man nodded once and walked away without introducing himself. Claire watched him go. "You didn't mention you had business associates here." "Didn't expect to," Daniel said. His hand found her elbow, steering her gently back toward the ballroom. "Come on, they're about to start the auction." His palm was warm, but she could feel tension in the grip, like a wire pulled taut beneath skin. Later that night in the car, she said lightly, "You seemed stressed, just tired. You've been tired a lot." He glanced at her, something unreadable flickering across his face, guilt perhaps, or relief. I'll take some time off after this project is done. You always say that. I mean it this time. She reached across the console and squeezed his hand. You don't have to run yourself into the ground for us, you know. His fingers tightened around hers. I know, he said quietly. What she did not know was that his eyes were shining, not with exhaustion, but with something closer to sorrow. The night before he died, Claire woke at 1:12 a.m. to find his side of the bed empty. At first she assumed he was in the study. A thin line of light usually glowed beneath the door when he worked late. But the hallway was dark. She moved quietly down the stairs, guided by the faint blue light spilling from the kitchen. Daniel stood at the counter, back to her shoulders hunched. The refrigerator door was open, though he wasn't reaching for anything. In his hand was one of the white envelopes they use for household bills. He didn't hear her at first. Daniel, he flinched so violently the envelope slipped from his fingers. For a split second, Claire saw his face clearly, pale eyes wide like a man dragged abruptly from a nightmare. Jesus, he said, pressing a hand to his chest. You scared me. Sorry, I woke up and you weren't there. He bent to pick up the envelope, folding it quickly before she could see what was inside. Couldn't sleep. Bad dream? Something like that. She stepped closer. You okay? For a moment, he just looked at her, as if memorizing her features. The silence stretched long enough to feel significant. Then he pulled her into an embrace so tight it almost hurt. Yeah, he murmured into her hair. I just needed to see you. She laughed softly, though unease prickled at the back of her neck. You see me every day. Not like this. Like what? He didn't answer. Instead, he kissed the top of her head, not casually, but with a deliberate tenderness that felt suspiciously like goodbye. Go back to bed, he said. I'll be up in a minute. She returned upstairs, but sleep did not come easily. When he finally joined her, his body was rigid beside hers, wakeful long after his breathing pretended otherwise. In the morning, he left early for the airport. He did not wake her to say goodbye. Now, sitting in the study with the hidden box at her feet, Claire replayed that night over and over, each detail sharpening into unbearable clarity. The envelope, the fear in his eyes, the way he held her as if he might never again. She rose slowly and crossed to the desk. It had already been cleared for renovation drawers emptied into labeled cartons in the hallway. But one thing remained, a small scratch on the wood surface, a thin, pale line cutting through the dark finish. Claire ran her finger along it. She had asked about that once. He said it was from a dropped screwdriver during installation. But the mark wasn't random. It formed a short, deliberate groove, almost like someone had carved it with purpose. Without quite knowing why, she pressed her thumb into the indentation. Nothing happened. She exhaled shakily, embarrassed by her own melodrama. This wasn't a spy novel. It was real life. Ordinary, devastating real life. Still, the sense of being watched or guided lingered. Downstairs, her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, startling in the quiet house. She ignored it at first, unwilling to rejoin the world of meetings and obligations. But it buzzed again and again. Finally, she went to check. The caller ID displayed an unknown number. For a long moment, she stared at it, heart pounding, for no rational reason. Then she answered, Hello, silence. Not the empty silence of a dropped call, but the charged breathing silence of someone listening. Hello, she repeated, sharper this time. A faint sound crackled through the line, not quite a voice, more like fabric brushing against a microphone. Then just before the call disconnected, she heard a whisper. A woman's voice, barely audible. Stop looking. The line went dead. Claire stood frozen in the kitchen, the phone still pressed to her ear, the words reverberating through her like a physical impact. Upstairs, hidden inside the walls, lay the remnants of her husband's secret life. And somewhere out there, someone knew she had found them. Claire did not call the police. The thought crossed her mind in a cold procedural way, as if she were reviewing options for a client rather than herself. Anonymous threat, hidden cash, false identity documents, a dead spouse with a secret life. Objectively, it was the kind of situation law enforcement existed to handle. But objectivity had abandoned her sometime between opening the metal box and hearing that whisper on the phone. Stop looking. The words didn't feel like a threat shouted from the shadows. They felt intimate, close, almost protective, the way someone might warn a stranger not to step into traffic. She set the phone down carefully on the counter, as if sudden movement might trigger something else. Her reflection stared back at her from the dark kitchen window, pale, sleepless, a woman aging in real time. "Get a grip," she said aloud. Her voice sounded thin, unconvincing. By mid-morning, she had constructed a plan the way she always did when confronted with chaos. Reduce emotion, increase action. Step 1, power up the remaining phones. Step 2, document everything. Step 3, find out who had called her. She returned to the study carrying a legal pad, a pen, and the detached calm she used in courtrooms. The metal box sat where she had left it, sunlight falling across its contents with almost accusatory clarity. One by one, she connected the phones to the battery pack. 2 remained dead. A third flickered weakly, then shut off. The fourth powered on fully. No lock screen, no carrier logo, just a blank interface and a list of contacts saved only as numbers except for 2 entries. Home, and one labeled simply E. Claire's pulse ticked upward. She opened the message history for E. Hundreds of texts appeared stretching back years. Most were brief, logistical, written in a tone so restrained it felt carefully controlled. Arrive safely. Don't answer unknown calls. Use the cash in envelope number 2. Miss you. The last message sent 3 months before Daniel's death read, "He's asking questions again. We may need to move sooner." Claire swallowed hard. The pronoun felt heavy with implication. He. Who was he? She scrolled further down, thumb trembling, despite her efforts to remain composed. Earlier messages became more personal, though never reckless. "She's growing so fast. You wouldn't recognize her. Tell her I'll call Sunday. I wish things were different." Then one that made her breath catch. "I'm sorry I can't be there for her birthday. Please tell her I love her." Her, the girl in the photograph. Claire pressed her fingers to her lips, a futile attempt to contain the sound rising in her throat. The realization did not arrive as a clean revelation, but as a slow, sickening seep. Daniel hadn't just fathered a child. He had loved her, from a distance perhaps, in secret, but persistently, deliberately, year after year. The phone felt suddenly hot in her hand, as if it contained a living pulse. She opened the contact information for E. No name, no email, just a phone number with a Chicago area code. Chicago, the same city Daniel had claimed to visit for work. Claire let out a humorless laugh that startled her with its bitterness. "Commercial redevelopment," she murmured. "Sure." Her gaze drifted to the unsent draft message she had seen earlier on the other phone. "I can't keep them safe much longer." Them, plural. This wasn't an affair that had ended. It was an ongoing operation. Secrecy, money burner phones, relocation plans. Protection or control. She wasn't sure which possibility hurt more. Around noon, she forced herself to eat a piece of toast that tasted like cardboard. Hunger had become theoretical, a concept remembered rather than experienced. While chewing mechanically, she opened her laptop and typed the Chicago number into a search engine. Nothing. No business listings, no public records, no social media links. Either the number was unregistered or deliberately scrubbed. She tried again with quotation marks, then through a paid background check database her firm sometimes used. Still nothing. A ghost number. Claire leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling. "Who were you, Daniel?" she whispered. For 12 years, she had believed she knew the answer. Now it felt as if she had been living beside a carefully constructed replica. At 2:03 p.m., her phone rang again. Unknown number. Her body went rigid before she consciously registered why. The sound seemed louder than normal, invasive, as if it had forced its way into the house rather than being invited. She let it ring twice, 3 times, and then, "Oh, sorry." On the 4th, she answered, "Hello." This time the silence was shorter. "You shouldn't be using that phone." The voice was female, low-accented faintly, not strongly enough to identify, but not native Boston either. Calm, almost weary. Claire's throat tightened. "Who is this?" A pause, then, "Did you find it in the study?" Ice spread through her chest. "How do you know about that?" Another pause, longer this time. Claire could hear breathing uneven, as if the caller were moving quickly or speaking from somewhere exposed. "Because he told me you might," the woman said finally. "He? Daniel." Claire gripped the counter edge so hard her knuckles whitened. "Who are you?" "I need you to stop," the woman said, not pleading, Not threatening, simply stating a fact. For your own safety. My safety from what? The line crackled. Somewhere in the background, a distant metallic bang echoed a door slamming perhaps, or something heavier, from him. The word landed like a dropped weight. Claire's mind raced. Who is him? What are you talking about? No answer. Listen to me, Claire said, voice sharpening into courtroom command. You don't get to call at my house. Tell me to stop asking questions about my dead husband and then disappear. Start explaining. For a moment, she thought the woman had hung up. Then very quietly, did he leave you money? The question stunned her into silence. In the wall, the woman continued. Cash, passports, phones. Yes, Claire said cautiously. Why? A shaky exhale traveled through the line, almost a sob suppressed before it could fully form. Then he thought you might need to run too. The kitchen seemed to contract around her, run from who she demanded. But the call had already disconnected. For several minutes, Claire stood motionless, phone pressed to her ear, long after the dead tone began. The house felt different now, not just empty, but exposed like a stage set with the walls removed. Run too. Daniel had hidden escape resources in their home. Not just for himself, possibly for her. The implication twisted something deep inside her chest. He had known danger was coming, and he hadn't told her. A surge of anger cut through the fear, hot and clarifying. You don't get to protect me by lying, she said to the empty room. You don't get to decide what I can handle. She returned to the study with renewed urgency. If Daniel had anticipated danger, he would have left more than cash and cryptic notes. He was too meticulous for half measures. She examined the wall cavity again, running her hands along the interior wood framing. Rough, unfinished surfaces scraped her fingertips. Nothing. She checked the baseboards, tapping lightly. Solid. Then her gaze lifted to the shelves Daniel had built, thick walnut planks mounted on concealed brackets. One shelf sat slightly lower than the others, a detail she had never noticed before. Claire stepped onto a chair and pressed upward. It didn't budge. She tried pulling outward. Still nothing. Come on, she muttered, frustration bleeding into desperation. You hid something. I know you did. Her hand slid along the underside of the shelf and caught on a tiny protrusion. Not wood. Metal. A recessed switch. Hard hammering, she pressed it. For a terrifying second, nothing happened. Then with a soft mechanical click, the paneling beside the shelves shifted inward by half an inch. Claire stumbled backward, nearly falling off the chair. Slowly, almost reluctantly, the panel swung open. Behind it was a narrow compartment no wider than a briefcase. Inside lay a single object, a tablet computer wrapped in plastic, and beneath it another envelope. Her name was written on the front in Daniel's unmistakable handwriting. Claire. No last name, no explanation. Just her first name rendered with the same careful precision he applied to architectural drawings. Her hand shook so badly she had to sit on the floor before opening it. Inside was a letter folded into thirds. She recognized the stationery, thick cream paper from the set they kept for formal correspondence, the kind they had used for holiday cards and condolence notes. Seeing it here in this context felt grotesquely intimate. She unfolded the pages. For a long moment, she could not bring herself to read. Then she did. Claire. If you're reading this, something has gone wrong. The words blurred as tears surged unexpectedly, violently. She wiped them away with the heel of her hand, forcing herself to continue. I never wanted you to be part of this. You were supposed to stay safe, untouched by the consequences of choices I made long before I met you. A choking sound escaped her throat. I love you. That was never a lie. But loving you meant building walls, some to keep secrets, in others to keep danger out. If they come asking questions, do not trust them, especially if they claim to be law enforcement. Her breath hitched. Take the money. Take the passports. Leave immediately. Go somewhere public, somewhere crowded. Do not go to anyone we know. I am so sorry. At the bottom, his signature, Daniel, written not with flourish, but with the quiet certainty that had always defined him. Claire pressed the paper to her chest, rocking slightly without realizing it. He had known, not just that danger existed, but that it might reach her. And still he had said nothing. Rage, grief, love, betrayal. They collided inside her with no clear boundary between them, a storm system too large to comprehend. On the floor beside her, the hidden tablet waited in silent accusation. Outside, a car slowed as it passed the house engine, noise dipping as if the driver were looking more closely than necessary. Claire did not notice. She was still staring at the letter, at the apology written in the handwriting she had once trusted more than her own instincts. Upstairs, the house remained perfectly still. Too still, as if holding its breath. The tablet required a password. Claire stared at the dark screen, Daniel's letter still crumpled in her lap, her pulse loud enough to feel in her throat. Of course it needed a password. Daniel never left anything unprotected. Not documents, not devices, not apparently entire second lives. She wiped her palms on her jeans and tried the obvious first. Their anniversary. Incorrect. His birthday. Incorrect. Her birthday. Incorrect. A hollow laugh escaped her. Of course not, she murmured. Nothing about you was obvious. She set the tablet aside and closed her eyes, forcing herself to breathe, slowly, methodically, the way she had learned during trial prep, when panic threatened to derail focus. Think like him. Daniel didn't choose sentimental things. He chose functional ones, precise ones, numbers that meant something structurally, not emotionally. Her gaze drifted to the photograph of the little girl lying beside the metal box. 7, maybe 8 years old. Claire picked it up again, studying the details she had missed before the background, the angle of sunlight, the playground equipment behind her. A sign partially visible in the distance bore a faded municipal logo. Lincoln Park, Chicago. Claire's heart gave a small, painful jolt. She typed Lincoln into the tablet. Incorrect. She tried Park. Incorrect! Her frustration mounted hot and irrational. What did you want me to find? Daniel, you hid it, then locked it, then wrote me a letter about danger. What am I supposed to do with that? Her voice cracked on the last word. The tablet screen went black, reflecting her face, red-eyed, exhausted, a stranger inhabiting her own features. In the reflection, something else appeared behind her. Movement. She froze. Slowly, she turned her head. Nothing. The open study door revealed only the empty hallway sunlight striping the hardwood floor. No shadows, no figures. Still, the sensation of being watched lingered, prickling the back of her neck. You're spiraling, she told herself. Lack of sleep, shock, grief. But Daniel's letter pulsed in her mind. If they come asking questions, do not trust them. Who were they? And how would she know when they had come? At 4:18 p.m., her doorbell rang. Claire nearly dropped the tablet. The sound was cheerful, domestic, the chime Daniel had chosen because it reminded him of a proper house. In that moment, it felt grotesque, like laughter at a funeral. She remained perfectly still, listening. A second ring, then a knock. Firm, official. Every nerve in her body screamed to stay silent. But what if it was Marcus returning, or a neighbor, or Mrs. Whitmore? A male voice called through the door, Wellesley Police Department. Her stomach plunged. She rose slowly, legs unsteady, and moved toward the foyer. Each step felt like wading through deep water. Through the frosted glass pane, she could make out a uniformed figure. Broad shoulders, dark cap. A police cruiser idled at the curb, lights off. Normal, ordinary, safe. Unless Daniel had been telling the truth. She stopped with her hand inches from the doorknob. What is this about? She called, hating the tremor in her voice. Routine follow-up, ma'am, regarding your husband's accident. Routine, of course. There would be paperwork, lingering questions, bureaucratic loose ends. Death did not close files as neatly as movies suggested. Still, unease coiled tighter in her chest. Can you show your badge through the glass? She asked. A pause, then the officer stepped closer, raising his hand. The metallic shape flashed briefly in the light, too quickly for her to read, but undeniably official looking. Just need a few minutes of your time, he said. Claire hesitated. If Daniel was wrong, she would look paranoid, unstable, the grieving widow unraveling. If he was right, her gaze flicked involuntarily toward the study. Take the money. Leave immediately. But she hadn't left. She hadn't even packed. Because some part of her still refused to believe that danger could reach into her quiet, affluent street lined with maple trees and dog walkers. Slowly, she opened the door. Up close, the officer looked ordinary in a way that inspired confidence. Late 40s, slightly graying at the temples, a face lined not by cruelty, but by fatigue. The kind of man who had seen too many car wrecks, too many domestic disputes, too many bad nights. Mrs. Whitmore, he said gently. Yes, I'm Officer Daniels. Sorry to bother you. He removed his cap, a small gesture of respect. We've had some new information regarding the collision that killed your husband. The word killed struck her as oddly direct. I thought it was an accident, she said carefully. That's still the working assumption, he replied. But there are irregularities. Her pulse quickened. What kind of irregularities? He glanced past her into the house, not rudely but with professional curiosity. Mind if we step inside? Every instinct screamed no. But refusing entry to a police officer would escalate things. Draw attention, possibly invite more officers, more questions, more scrutiny. She stepped back. Of course, They sat in the living room, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the rug. The officer declined coffee, resting his hat on his knee. Your husband's vehicle data recorder shows something unusual, he began. A sudden acceleration just before impact. Claire frowned. Maybe he panicked. Maybe. He studied her face with quiet intensity. Or maybe he was trying to get away from something. The room seemed to tilt. Get away from what? That's what we're trying to determine. His gaze drifted briefly toward the hallway leading to the study. A tiny movement easily missed. Noticing it sent a cold spike through her spine. You mentioned irregularities, she said, forcing calm. Is that all? He hesitated, as if weighing how much to reveal. Witnesses reported another vehicle leaving the scene at high speed. Dark sedan, no plates recorded. Claire's hands tightened in her lap. Are you saying someone caused the crash? We're not ruling it out. Silence settled between them, heavy with implication. Finally, she asked, why are you telling me this now? It's been 4 months. He leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees. Because we believe your husband may have been involved in something that put him at risk. The words echoed Daniel's letter with chilling precision. Something has gone wrong. What kind of something? She whispered. Instead of answering, the officer reached into his jacket and removed a small evidence bag. Inside was a photograph. Claire's breath stopped. It was the same little girl from the picture in the metal box, sitting on the same swing, sunlight in her hair. Do you recognize her? He asked. The room spun. Every instinct told her to lie. No, she said, the words scraping her throat raw. I've never seen her before. His eyes held hers a fraction too long, searching, measuring. Then he nodded slowly, as if filing away her response. Thank you for your time, Mrs. Whitmore. He rose, replacing his cap with practiced efficiency. Relief flooded her so abruptly it left her dizzy. He was leaving. It was over. But at the door he paused. If anyone contacts you about your husband, he said without turning around, you should notify us immediately. A beat. Some people connected to his activities may not have your best interests at heart. The phrasing was careful, non-accusatory, official. Still, something in his tone felt off, too smooth, too rehearsed. He stepped onto the porch. Claire watched him walk to the cruiser, her heart hammering. As he opened the driver's door, he glanced back at the house, not casually, but with the focused attention of someone memorizing details. Then he drove away. Claire closed the door and leaned against it, knees threatening to give out. The photograph. How had they gotten it, unless Daniel had been under investigation, unless his secret life had intersected with something criminal, unless her thoughts fractured, splintering into too many possibilities to process? Slowly, she returned to the study. The tablet lay where she had left it, inert and impenetrable. The hidden compartment yawned open like a wound in the wall. She picked up the photograph of the girl again, comparing it to the memory of the one in the evidence bag. Identical, which meant the police, or whoever that man really was, knew about her. And now they knew Claire had seen her too. A cold certainty settled over her heavy as stone. Daniel hadn't been warning her about hypothetical danger. It was already here. Her gaze drifted to the passport bearing the name David Mercer, to the stacks of cash, to the burner phones waiting like silent accomplices. Run. The word no longer felt dramatic. It felt logical. Upstairs, a floorboard creaked. Claire's head snapped up. The house was supposed to be empty. For a long moment, she listened, every muscle locked in place. Another sound, soft, deliberate. Footsteps. Not outside, inside. Someone was in her house. Claire did not scream. The sound rose in her throat, primal and unstoppable, but years of cultivated self-control crushed it before it could escape. Instead, she stood frozen in the center of the study, every nerve ending suddenly electric, every breath shallow and painfully loud in her own ears. Upstairs, another footstep, slow, unhurried. Not the accidental creak of a settling house, the unmistakable weight of a person moving carefully, deliberately, as if aware they were not alone. Her gaze flicked to the open front door. No, she had locked it after the officer left. She remembered turning the deadbolt, her hand trembling, which meant whoever was upstairs had either been there already or had another way in. Daniel's letter flashed through her mind. Do not trust them. Her pulse roared. The study offered no weapon, no obvious escape route, only paper electronics and the gaping wound in the wall exposing her husband's secrets to the open air. Another step. Closer to the stairs now, Claire's survival instincts finally broke through paralysis. She grabbed the tablet, the letter, and one of the passports, without fully deciding to do so, her hands acting on behalf of a body that had recognized danger before her mind caught up. She slipped into the hallway, moving on the balls of her feet, each step agonizingly slow. The staircase loomed ahead, curving upward into shadow. Halfway to the kitchen, she heard it. A faint metallic click from above, like a door handle turning. Then silence. He or she was listening too. Claire's heart hammered so violently she was certain it could be heard from the second floor. She pressed herself against the wall, forcing air into her lungs through her nose, shallow and controlled. Think. Front door exposed. Back door visible from the stairs. Basement, no exit. Her eyes landed on the mudroom door leading to the garage. If she could reach the car, a floorboard groaned overhead. Movement again, faster this time. Decision replaced hesitation. Claire bolted. Her shoes slapped against tile as she sprinted through the kitchen, the sound explosively loud after so much silence. She didn't look back. Looking back would slow her down, would confirm what she already knew, that someone was behind her. The mudroom door burst open under her shoulder. Cold air flooded in from the garage, carrying the faint smell of motor oil and cardboard boxes. Her car sat exactly where she had left it, silver paint dull in the dim light. Her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped the keys trying to unlock it. Behind her, the interior doors slammed open. Footsteps pounded across tile. Claire dove into the driver's seat, yanking the door shut just as a hand struck the window with a heavy thud. She screamed, then a short, raw sound ripped from her chest as she twisted the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life. Through the glass, she saw only fragments: a dark sleeve, a gloved hand, the blurred outline of a figure trying to wrench the handle open. Not a police officer, not a neighbor, not anyone who belonged there. She slammed the car into reverse tires, shrieking as she backed out of the garage. The figure stumbled away, vanishing from view as daylight exploded into the rear window. For one wild second, she thought she might hit them. Then she was in the driveway, then the street, accelerating far beyond the posted speed limit, breath coming in ragged gasps that bordered on chefs. Only after 3 blocks did she risk glancing in the rearview mirror. No one followed. She drove without direction, instinct overriding logic, turning randomly through quiet residential streets until the manicured sameness blurred together. Dog walkers stared. A cyclist shouted as she cut too close. None of it registered. Her hands were locked around the steering wheel, knuckles, bone-white forearms trembling with adrenaline. The tablet slid across the passenger's seat each time she took a corner too fast. Someone had been inside her house, not searching politely, not waiting to talk, hunting. At a red light, the first one she couldn't legally ignore, she forced herself to breathe deeply. In through the nose, out through the mouth, again. Again, her phone buzzed on the console. She flinched violently, almost swerving. Unknown number. Of course. For a moment, she considered throwing the device out the window. Instead, with a shaking hand, she answered. What? The word came out harsher than intended, edged with hysteria. You opened the compartment. The woman's voice, calm, certain. Claire's throat tightened. Someone was in my house, I know. Ice flooded her veins. How do you know? A pause. Because if it was him, you wouldn't be calling me. The casual logic of that statement made her stomach twist. Who is he? Claire demanded. And who are you? Silence stretched long enough to feel intentional. Finally, the woman said, My name is Elena. The name landed softly, almost gently, and yet it carried the weight of revelation. Claire whispered, glancing at the tablet. You're E. Yes, you knew Daniel. Another pause. Not evasive this time, but heavy with memory. I loved him, Elena said quietly. The words struck like a physical blow. Claire's vision blurred, whether from tears or rage, she couldn't tell. So you're his mistress, she said, the accusation sharp and ugly. No. The denial was immediate, firm. I was the woman he could never be with. Claire let out a brittle laugh. That sounds like the same thing. You don't understand. Then explain it to me, Claire snapped. Because right now I have a dead husband with a fake identity, a hidden child, strangers breaking into my home, and you calling me like this is normal. For several seconds, there was only breathing on the line, uneven as if Elena were fighting to maintain composure. Then she said, Is the little girl safe? The question stunned Claire into silence. What? The photo, Elena clarified. Was it still in the box? Yes, Claire said slowly. Why wouldn't it be? A shaky exhale. Relief unmistakable. Good. Claire's grip tightened on the steering wheel. Who is she? Another silence. This one longer. More painful. My daughter, Elena said at last. The world seemed to tilt. And Daniel, she added. Claire closed her eyes as the light turned green and horns erupted behind her. She drove forward automatically, barely seeing the road. I figured that, she said numbly. He didn't abandon her. Elena continued, voice suddenly urgent. If that's what you think, you're wrong. Everything he did was to protect her. From who? Elena didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice had dropped to a near whisper. From my father. Claire frowned. Your father, he was a police officer for 22 years. A cold dread began to spread through her chest. He was forced out after an internal investigation, Elena went on. Excessive force, evidence tampering, things that never made it into the official reports. Claire's mind flashed to the man who had stood in her living room barely an hour earlier. The badge, the calm authority, the careful questions. After that, Elena said he became obsessed, controlling, paranoid. He thought Daniel had taken me away from him, stolen his family. But you're an adult, Claire said weakly. That didn't matter to him. Traffic noise roared around Claire's car, suddenly too loud, too chaotic. The world felt unreal, like she was watching someone else's nightmare through a dirty window. Daniel helped us disappear, Elena said. New identities, money, safe places to stay. We moved every few months. Claire's stomach churned. The messages about moving sooner, yes. And the cash in the wall in case something happened to him. Something had. He was supposed to come get us, Elena said, voice breaking for the first time. He said it would be safe soon, that he had a plan. Claire's throat closed painfully. Come home, alone. He wrote that note, she whispered. It was for you. Yes, not for Claire, not over their marriage, not for closure, for Elena. A wave of humiliation washed over her, hot and suffocating. Even in death, Daniel's secret life had taken precedence. He was on his way to us the night he died, Elena said. Claire's breath hitched. What he called before he left the airport. Said he thought he was being followed. The memory of the officer's words returned with brutal clarity. Another vehicle leaving the scene at high speed. Dark sedan, no plates. Claire's hands began to shake uncontrollably. Elena, she said slowly, dread crystallizing into certainty. A police officer came to my house today. Said he was investigating the crash. Silence exploded through the line. Then in a voice stripped of all composure, get somewhere crowded. Right now. Why? Because if it was my father, Elena said he won't stop until he finds what Daniel hid. Claire's heart pounded. What did he hide? Another pause. When Elena spoke again, the words came out like a confession dragged from deep underwater. Us. The meaning settled over Claire like falling ash. Not money, not documents, people. A family Daniel had been protecting in secret, while building a life with her in plain sight. And now that he was gone, the man hunting them had turned his attention to the only person left who might know where they were. Claire tightened her grip on the wheel eyes, scanning the road ahead for somewhere, anywhere that filled with the witnesses. Claire Elena said urgently, "Listen to me. You can't go home again." Claire swallowed hard, her throat raw. "I don't think I ever can," she said. In the rearview mirror, a dark sedan turned onto her street. Maintaining distance, matching her speed, her blood ran cold. "He found you," Elena whispered, as if she could see it too. Claire's foot pressed harder on the accelerator. For the first time since opening the wall, she understood the full terrifying scope of Daniel's secret. He hadn't just been living two lives. He had been standing between them and something monstrous. And now that barrier was gone. Claire did not remember deciding where to go. Her body chose for her instinct, overriding reason, survival eclipsing dignity. She veered onto the nearest major road, merging into dense, late-afternoon traffic, where anonymity was possible, where one car could dissolve into hundreds. Behind her, the dark sedan followed. Not aggressively, not close enough to trigger alarm from other drivers. Just present, patient, hunting. Her hands slipped on the steering wheel, slick with sweat. She wiped them on her jeans without taking her eyes off the mirror. "Elena," she said hoarsely, forcing the word past the constriction in her throat. "He's still behind me." "I know," Elena replied. Her voice had gone flat, controlled in the way people become when panic is too dangerous to indulge. "Listen carefully. Is there somewhere crowded nearby, a mall, a hospital, anywhere with security cameras?" Claire scanned the road signs flashing past in a blur. "Natick Mall, 2 miles. "Yes," she said. "A mall. Go there. Park near the main entrance. Do not go to an isolated level." Claire nodded even though Elena couldn't see her. "What happens then?" "Then you stay visible. And you, pause, well, I'll figure something out." The answer felt like a lie, or at least not the whole truth. "You sound like him," Claire said quietly. "Like Daniel, yes." Another silence, softer this time. "He taught me how to survive," Elena said. The words twisted something inside Claire's chest. Grief and resentment braided together so tightly they were indistinguishable. The mall parking structure loomed ahead, a concrete labyrinth glowing under harsh fluorescent lights. Claire entered without slowing, tires squealing faintly as she took the turn too sharply. Cars surrounded her now, families loading shopping bags, teenagers drifting in loud clusters, the ordinary noise of commerce and boredom. Safety of a sort. She chose a space directly across from the main entrance, where glass doors slid open and closed in a steady rhythm. People everywhere. Witnesses everywhere. The dark sedan rolled in 30 seconds later. Claire's breath caught. It did not park next to her. It didn't need to. Instead, it stopped several rows back, engine idling angled, so the driver had a clear line of sight to her car. Watching, waiting. Her pulse thudded painfully against her ribs. "Elena," she whispered, "he's here. Stay in the car. What if he comes closer?" "He won't. Not there, not with that many people." Claire wanted to believe her. "Why is he doing this?" she asked, voice trembling. "Daniel is dead. Whatever he wanted is over." "You don't understand," Elena said. "For him, it's never over. It's about control. It always was." The words carried the weight of years of fear. A group of children ran past Claire's car, laughing, backpacks bouncing. One of them stopped to tie a shoe face pressed briefly against the window, as if peering into another world. Claire froze, terrified. He might see her panic, might somehow sense the danger. But he just finished tying the lace and ran off carefree and oblivious. Normal life continuing inches away from catastrophe. "He didn't just hate Daniel," Elena said quietly. "He hated the idea that I could choose someone else, that I could leave. So he tried to kill you, yes." The bluntness of the answer made Claire's stomach lurch. "And now he thinks you know where we are." Claire closed her eyes. "I don't, I know. But he won't believe that." In the rearview mirror, the sedan's driver door opened. Claire's heart slammed violently against her ribs. A man stepped out. From this distance, she could not see his face clearly, only a tall silhouette, broad-shouldered movements controlled and unhurried. He wore civilian clothes now, not a uniform. Dark jacket, dark pants, nothing distinctive, except the way he stood. Balanced, alert, like someone accustomed to confrontation. He leaned casually against the car, arms folded, gaze fixed on Claire's vehicle, as if studying an object rather than a person, waiting for her to make the first move. "Oh God," she whispered. "He's out of the car. Is he approaching you?" "No. He's just watching. A sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. That's worse. Why? Because it means he's not desperate. He thinks he has time. Time to do what Claire didn't ask. She was afraid of the answer. Minutes crawled by, viscous and unreal. Shoppers passed between the cars, occasionally blocking her view of the man, but he never moved, never looked away. A fixed point of threat in a sea of normalcy. Claire's legs had gone numb from pressing the brake too long. She shifted slightly, and the movement seemed deafening in the enclosed space of the car. "I can't stay here forever," she whispered. "Yes, you can," Elena said, "or at least long enough for me to get there." Claire blinked. "What, I'm coming to you?" "No," Claire said immediately. "That's insane if he's looking for you. He doesn't know what I look like now." The statement was matter-of-fact, but something in it felt deeply sad. "You changed your identity," Claire said. "Yes, you're a co-daughter too." "A beat?" "Yes." Claire pictured the girl in the photograph. Sunlight, laughter, innocence, frozen in time. Somewhere out there, she was growing up under a different name, a different life built on fear and secrecy. Daniel's daughter, a child he had never been able to claim publicly, a child Claire had never known existed. Jealousy stabbed unexpectedly, sharp as broken glass. You got everything she said before she could stop herself. His love, his protection, his child. Silence filled the line. When Elena spoke again, her voice was raw. "You got the part of him that believed life could be normal." The words hit Claire harder than any accusation. "He never stopped loving you," Elena continued. "He said you were the only good thing he ever did that wasn't ruined by violence." Claire's vision blurred. "That doesn't make this okay," she whispered. "No, it doesn't." For the first time since the call began, they sounded less like rivals and more like two casualties of the same war. In the parking lot, the man shifted his weight slightly, glancing at his watch. Impatience, subtle but unmistakable. "What if I just walk into the mall?" Claire said. "Lose him in the crowd. He'll follow you. Then at least I won't be trapped in a car." Elena hesitated. "You could try, but stay near security, cameras, people." Claire nodded to herself, though her hands trembled so violently, she wasn't sure she could even open the door. "Claire," Elena said softly, "whatever happens, none of this is your fault." The kindness in her voice nearly broke something inside her. "Tell that to my life," Claire said, managing a hollow laugh. 4 months ago, my biggest problem was a hostile takeover case. And now Claire watched the man across the lot, his face still indistinct, but his attention unwavering. "Now I'm the evidence." She ended the call and forced herself to move. 1 breath. 2. Her hand closed around the door handle. Across the lot, the man straightened. He knew. Of course he knew. Claire stepped out of the car, legs unsteady, heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her fingertips. The late afternoon air felt shockingly cold against her flushed skin. Dozens of people moved around her, none aware that the space between 2 parked cars had become a battlefield. She started toward the entrance, each step deliberate, refusing to run, refusing to give him the satisfaction of visible fear. Behind her footsteps, not hurried, not loud, just close enough. She did not turn around. Turning around would acknowledge him, would confirm she knew he was there. The glass doors loomed ahead, reflecting her pale face, her rigid posture, and behind her a dark shape closing the distance. 10 feet? 8, 6. Her pulse roared. Then a voice low and unmistakably male spoke just behind her shoulder. "Claire Whitmore." She stopped. The world narrowed to a pinpoint. "I only want to talk," he said calmly. She turned slowly. Up close, his face was older than she expected. Deeply lined eyes, sharp and colorless. The eyes of a man who had spent decades looking at people as problems to be solved. Not the officer who had visited her house, but similar enough to confirm the truth. "Elena's father," she said, voice barely audible. A faint smile touched his mouth, devoid of warmth. "So he did tell you about me?" Her stomach dropped. "Where are they?" he asked. "I don't know." The smile vanished. Wrong answer. His hand moved not toward her, not aggressively, but toward his jacket, as if reaching for something inside. Claire's blood ran cold. Behind the glass doors, shoppers moved obliviously, silhouettes of normal life just inches away. Too far, not far enough. In that suspended second, Claire understood something with terrible clarity. Daniel had not died escaping this man. He had died buying time, and now that time had run out. Claire did not step back. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to dive through the glass doors, to put distance and bodies and noise between herself and the man reaching into his jacket. But another instinct, colder, quieter, born from a lifetime of reading people across conference tables and courtrooms, told her that sudden movement would trigger something irreversible. So she stayed where she was. People brushed past them on both sides, shopping bags, swinging conversations, flowing the mundane choreography of daily life continuing uninterrupted. To anyone watching, they were just two adults pausing mid-stride, predator and witness disguised as strangers. His hand disappeared into his jacket. Claire's breath stalled in her chest. Then he pulled out a folded piece of paper. No weapon, no sudden violence, just paper creased and worn at the edges as if it had been handled too often. He held it between two fingers. "Your husband carried this for years," he said. "I took it from his wallet after the crash." Claire didn't move. "Go ahead," he added softly. "Take it." Her hand felt numb as she reached out. The paper was warm from his body heat. When she unfolded it, she recognized the image immediately. A photograph, not of the little girl, of her. Claire laughing at something off-camera, sunlight in her hair, a wine glass in her hand. It had been taken at a company picnic nearly a decade earlier. She remembered the day because Daniel had seemed unusually relaxed, even playful. She had never known he was carrying this. Her throat tightened painfully. "You see," the man said, watching her reaction with clinical interest, "he loved you too." Too. The words sliced cleanly through her chest. "You killed him," she said, voice barely steady. His expression did not change. "I didn't say that. You chased him. He made choices." Anger flared bright and clarifying. "He was protecting your daughter. He stole my daughter," the man snapped, composure fracturing for the first time. The words came out low and vicious, teeth clenched around each syllable. He filled her head with lies, turned her against her own blood. Claire saw then what Elena had meant. This wasn't grief. It wasn't even rage in the ordinary sense. It was ownership. "You hurt her," Claire said quietly. "That's why she left." His eyes flashed something dangerous flickering beneath the surface. For a moment she thought he might strike her right there in the open. Instead he leaned closer, voice dropping to a whisper meant only for her. "Where is she? I don't know." His gaze searched her face, probing for deception. Claire forced herself not to look away, not to betray the terror clawing at her insides. "You're lying," he said. "I'm not." He studied her for another long moment, then straightened slightly, recalibrating. "Daniel wouldn't leave you ignorant," he said. "Not if he thought I might come after you." Claire said nothing. Silence stretched between them, thick with calculation. Finally, he sighed a weary sound, almost human. "You know, he said, I didn't intend to involve you. You were collateral, an unfortunate complication." The casual dismissal hit harder than any insult. "Your husband made this messy," he continued. "He could have walked away, could have left my family alone. But he wanted to play hero. He loved them," Claire said. "And that makes it better." The question hung in the air, unanswerable. Behind the glass doors, a security guard strolled past, pausing briefly to adjust something on his radio. The man's eyes flicked toward him, assessing distance, response time, risk. Claire saw the calculation happen in real time. "You can't do anything here," she said, seizing the moment. "Too many people." He smiled faintly. "I don't need to." Before she could react, he reached out and brushed something against her sleeve, a movement so quick and subtle it might have been mistaken for accidental contact. Then he stepped back. Claire's heart lurched. "What did you do?" "Insurance," he said calmly. Panic surged. She grabbed her sleeve, feeling for anything, a needle, a device, something taped to the fabric. "Nothing. But that didn't mean you were very easy to find now," he added. "No matter where you go." Her stomach dropped. "A tracker." "Of course, you're sick," she whispered. "Persistent," he corrected. "There's a difference." His phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. "Listen carefully, Claire Whitmore," he said, voice losing its conversational tone. "I don't want you. I want my daughter and my granddaughter. Help me find them and you can go back to your quiet little life." "My quiet life is gone," she said. "That depends on your choices." Another buzz. This time he checked the screen, irritation flashing across his face. For the first time, his attention wavered. Claire acted on instinct. She lunged past him, shoving through the glass doors into the mall's bright interior. Noise crashed over her, music chatter, the hum of escalators overwhelming after the tense silence outside. "Security," she shouted, voice cracking. "I need security." Heads turned, conversations faltered. The guard near the entrance snapped upright, hand going to his radio. Behind her, the man did not pursue immediately. When she glanced back, he was still outside, watching through the glass, expression unreadable. Then he turned and walked away. Just like that. No rush, no panic, as if he had already accomplished what he came for. Claire sagged against the pillar legs, trembling so violently she thought they might give out entirely. The guard approached cautiously, concern etched across his face. "Ma'am, are you okay?" She nodded automatically, unable to form coherent words. Her mind was stuck on the brief contact, the brush of his hand against her sleeve. "You're very easy to find now." An hour later, Claire sat in a crowded food court surrounded by the comforting anonymity of strangers. A paper cup of coffee cooled untouched in front of her. She had checked her sleeve a dozen times, turned it inside out, felt along every seam. Nothing, which meant the device, if there was one, had to be smaller, hidden better, possibly already transmitting. Her phone buzzed. "Elena," Claire answered immediately. "He put something on me," she said without preamble. "A tracker, I think." A sharp intake of breath. "Where are you?" "The mall. Food court." "Stay there, I'm close." "Close." The word sent a ripple of conflicting emotions through Claire: relief, dread, curiosity, resentment. The woman who had shared her husband's secret life was about to step into her visible one. "Claire," Elena said softly, "there's something you need to know before I arrive." Claire's grip tightened on the phone. "What?" A long pause, heavy with hesitation. "Daniel didn't just plan to bring us to you," Elena said. "He planned to tell you everything. All of it." Claire blinked. "Why?" "Because he was dying." The world seemed to tilt again. "What?" "He was sick," Elena continued. "Aggressive cancer. He found out 6 months before the crash." Claire's breath hitched painfully. Daniel had complained of fatigue, of headaches. She had attributed it to overwork, to stress. He had let her believe that. "He didn't want his last months to be lies," Elena said. "He wanted you to meet us, to decide what to do with the truth." Tears blurred Claire's vision. "He never gave me that choice," she whispered. "I know." Silence stretched between them, filled with everything unsaid. Then Elena added very quietly, "He loved you enough to be afraid you'd hate him." Claire closed her eyes, a sob escaping before she could stop it. Love, betrayal, grief, they crashed together in a wave too large to survive intact. Across the food court, a woman stood up from a table. Average height, dark hair pulled into a loose knot, plain clothes deliberately forgettable. But her eyes, wary, searching, exhausted, locked onto Claire's with unmistakable recognition. "Elena." She approached slowly, as if nearing a wild animal that might bolt at any moment. For several seconds, they simply stared at each other, two women bound by the same man in entirely different ways. Finally, Elena spoke. "He won't stop," she said. "Not until he has us." Claire wiped her face with shaking hands. "Then we need to stop him first." Elena's expression shifted, surprise and something like hope flickering beneath the fear. "You'd help us?" she asked. Claire thought of Daniel's letter, of the hidden wall, of the child laughing in sunlight, of the life she had lost and the truth she had inherited. "He died trying to protect you," she said quietly. "I won't let that be for nothing." For the first time, Elena's composure cracked. Tears welled in her eyes, spilling over before she could stop them. "Thank you," she whispered. Claire shook her head. "Don't thank me yet," she said. "We still have to survive." Above them, security cameras rotated silently, recording everything. Two women sitting at a plastic table, planning how to outmaneuver a man who had already destroyed one life and was closing in on the rest. Somewhere out there, he was watching, waiting, tracking. And for the first time, Claire understood that survival would not come from running. It would come from confronting the truth Daniel had died to keep hidden. Night fell before either of them left the mall. Claire insisted on it. Darkness meant crowds thinning, shadows deepening, variables multiplying, but it also meant something else, the illusion of normal closure. Stores shuttered, families went home, security routines shifted, patterns reset, Predators relied on patterns. So did prey. Elena sat across from her at the small plastic table, hands wrapped around a cup of tea she hadn't touched. Up close, she looked older than Claire had expected, not in years but in wear. Fine lines etched by worry rather than time. Eyes that scanned every entrance, reflexively cataloging threats before faces. "She's with a friend," Elena said quietly. "My daughter. Safe for now." Claire nodded. "Does she know what's happening?" A fragile smile flickered. "She thinks we move a lot because I like new cities." The lie hung between them, both necessary and cruel. Claire thought of the photograph, sunlight, laughter, innocence, frozen in a moment before fear became the architecture of her life. "She looks like him," Claire said. Elena's throat tightened visibly. "Yes." Neither woman said Daniel's name. It lingered unspoken, too heavy to handle directly. They moved only when the last department store gate clattered shut and the overhead lights dimmed to a softer after-hours glow. Claire stood, legs stiff, body exhausted, in a way that sleep could not fix. "Before we go," Elena said, "we need to deal with the tracker." Claire peeled off her jacket, then her sweater, ignoring curious glances from a passing janitor. Under the harsh fluorescent light, Elena examined the seams with clinical precision. "Here," she said finally, fingers pinching a tiny black dot, no larger than a sesame seed embedded near the cuff. Claire stared. "That's it?" "Yes." Elena didn't remove it immediately. Instead, she slipped it carefully into the empty sugar packet from her tea, folding the paper around it like contraband. "We'll leave it somewhere else," she said. "Let him follow the wrong trail." Claire exhaled shakily. For the first time since the parking lot, she felt the faintest sliver of control returning. They exited through a side door into the cool night air. The parking lot was mostly empty, now rows of silent vehicles gleaming under sodium lights. Elena led the way to a battered sedan parked near a flickering lamppost, a car so nondescript it practically erased itself. Before getting in, she paused, scanning the shadows. "He could still be watching," she murmured. "Let him," Claire said, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice. Elena glanced at her, something like approval in her eyes. They drove in silence for nearly 20 minutes, leaving the polished suburbs behind for older industrial streets where warehouses loomed like sleeping giants. Finally, Elena pulled into an abandoned train yard, gravel crunching under the tires. Claire frowned. "Why here?" Elena held up the folded sugar packet. "Because there's no one to hurt if he comes." She stepped out, walked to the edge of the lot, and wedged the packet into a crack in a rusted metal fence. Then she returned to the car without looking back. "He'll find it," she said. "Eventually. And when he does," Elena met her gaze, "he'll know we're not running anymore." They ended up at a small motel off a highway exit, the kind with faded curtains and a vending machine humming in the lobby. Temporary, anonymous, safe enough for one night. Inside the room, Claire sank onto the edge of the bed, exhaustion crashing over her in waves. Everything hurt her muscles, her head the hollow space in her chest where certainty used to live. Elena remained standing by the window, parting the curtain just enough to watch the parking lot. "He won't come tonight," she said. "How do you know?" "Because he'll be checking the tracker first." Claire nodded, though reassurance felt like a fragile illusion. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Claire said quietly, "Tell me about the night Daniel died." Elena's shoulders stiffened. "I was waiting for him," she said after a long pause. "He said he had something important to tell both of us, that it was time to stop hiding." Claire's throat tightened. "He sounded peaceful," Elena continued. "Not scared, not rushed, just tired of secrets." Tears welled in Claire's eyes, blurring the cheap floral wallpaper into soft shapes. "He never told me he was sick," she whispered. "I begged him to," Elena said. "He said he couldn't bear to see you pity him." A broken laugh escaped Claire. "I wouldn't have pitied him. I would have stayed. I know." Silence settled, heavy but no longer hostile. Sometime after midnight, Claire rose and crossed to the small desk. The tablet lay where she had placed it earlier, its black screen reflecting the dim lamplight. She picked it up. "I never figured out the password," she said. Elena watched her carefully. "Try her birthday." Claire frowned. "You said you changed identities." "Yes, but he never did." Claire hesitated, then entered the date Elena recited. The tablet unlocked instantly. Her breath caught. Inside was not financial data or escape plans or criminal records. It was videos, dozens of them. Daniel sitting at the desk in the study speaking directly to the camera, sometimes clean-shaven, sometimes unshaven, sometimes composed, sometimes visibly exhausted. Messages for Claire, Elena said softly. Claire's hands trembled as she tapped the first file. The screen flickered to life. Daniel appeared older than she remembered, eyes shadowed but unmistakably gentle. "If you're seeing this," he said, voice quiet but steady, "it means I didn't get the chance to explain in person. And I am so sorry for that." Claire covered her mouth, a sob breaking free. "I never wanted to hurt you," he continued, "but the truth would have hurt you too, and I ran out of time to decide which pain was kinder." He paused, looking directly into the camera into her. "I loved you from the moment you laughed at my terrible joke during that deposition. I loved the life we built, the quiet mornings, the normal things. You made me believe I could be more than the worst parts of my past." Tears streamed down Claire's face, unchecked. "Elena and her daughter needed protection," Daniel said. "But you needed honesty. I thought I could give you both eventually." His voice faltered for the first time. "I should have trusted you sooner." On the screen, he reached forward and switched off the camera. The video ended. Claire pressed the tablet to her chest, shoulders shaking with silent sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than grief alone, from the collapse of an entire reality. Dawn crept into the motel room hours later, pale light seeping around the curtains. Claire had not slept. Neither had Elena. At some point, they stopped sitting across from each other like strangers and simply occupied the same space, united by loss too complex to categorize. Finally, Claire spoke. "What happens now?" Elena considered the question for a long time. "We keep moving," she said, "but differently, not just running, living." And your father, Elena's gaze drifted to the window, where early commuters sped past unaware. "He'll keep looking," she said quietly. "Men like him don't stop. They just get older." Claire absorbed that, surprisingly calm. "Then we don't stop either." Elena turned, searching her face. "You don't have to be part of this." Claire thought of the empty house, the hidden wall, the life that had dissolved overnight into fragments and lies. "I don't think I have a version of my old life left," she said. After a moment, Elena nodded. "Then we'll build a new one." 2 weeks later, Claire returned to the house one last time. Not to stay, not to remember, to finish something. The study wall had been repaired, the hidden compartments sealed, the room restored to its original immaculate state, as if nothing had ever been there. She stood in the doorway for a long time, absorbing the quiet. Then she picked up a hammer. The first strike echoed through the house, loud and final, drywall cracks splintering along a jagged line. She hit it again and again. Chunks fell away, exposing the raw wooden studs beneath the skeleton of the wall Daniel had built to contain his secrets. Dust filled the air, stinging her eyes, but she kept swinging until a wide opening gaped where the pristine surface had been. No compartments now, no hiding places, just emptiness. Claire lowered the hammer chest, heaving. "This is the last one," she whispered to the silent room. Not a promise to Daniel, a promise to herself. She sold the house within the month. No forwarding address, no explanation. Neighbors would later say she seemed composed on moving day, even serene, as if shedding something heavy rather than losing it. What they could not see was the small photograph tucked inside her wallet, a laughing child on a swing, sunlight caught in her hair. Family in a form she had never expected. Somewhere on a distant highway, a nondescript sedan carried 3 passengers toward a city where no one knew their names. Claire sat in the back seat, watching the landscape blur past the horizon, wide and uncertain. Grief still lived inside her. Betrayal too. Love stubborn and unresolved. But alongside them now was something new. Freedom. Not the naive freedom of a life untouched by pain, but the harder kind earned through truth, through loss, through the acceptance that people can love deeply and still cause irreparable harm. She did not forgive Daniel completely. She did not hate him either. She simply carried him with her as one carries a scar proof of survival, not weakness. Beside her, Elena's daughter slept with her head against Claire's shoulder. Small fingers curled trustingly in the fabric of her sleeve. Claire rested her cheek lightly against the child's hair, eyes closing for the first time in weeks. Outside, the road stretched forward, endless and unknowable. For the first time since the wall was opened, that uncertainty did not feel like terror. It felt like possibility. And somewhere far behind them, in a quiet suburb with manicured lawns and shuttered windows, a broken wall stood as the only witness to a man who had tried imperfectly, desperately to protect everyone he loved at once. In the end, the secrets did not destroy them. They set them free.